Have you ever pushed someone away, convinced they were holding you back, only to realize too late that they were the only thing holding you up? Camille thought her marriage to Andrew was a suffocating cage. She wanted passion. She wanted space. But when she finally asked for a separation, expecting a fight or tears, Andrew didn't argue. He just left. That was the moment the real nightmare began. This is the story of a wife who got exactly what she wished for, and the quiet husband who revealed his true worth only by walking away. If stories about complex relationships and the heavy price of freedom speak to you, please hit that subscribe button and stay with me. Let's see what happens when the silence becomes louder than words.
The crystal tumbler hit the marble countertop with a sound that was too loud for the silence of the kitchen. It wasn't a slam, just a decisive placement, marking the end of 14 years of routine. Camille stood by the window, refusing to look at me, her reflection in the dark glass revealing the tears she thought she was hiding. She said she needed space, that she was suffocating in the air I breathed. But as I looked at her, really looked at her, I didn't see a woman trapped. I saw a woman who had already left a long time ago. If stories about the deafening sound of a quiet exit speak to you, stay with me. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 11 times. The sound resonated through the high ceilings of our Back Bay brownstone, heavy and mournful, like a gavel striking a judge's bench. I stood by the kitchen island, a glass of water in my hand, watching the condensation slide down the crystal. Across the room, Camille was pacing. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor in a staccato rhythm that betrayed her anxiety. She was wearing the silk robe I had bought her for our 10th anniversary, but tonight she had tied it tighter than usual, as if armor against what she was about to say. "Andrew, are you even listening to me?" Her voice cracked, sharp and desperate. I took a slow sip of water, the cold liquid doing little to settle the burning knot in my chest. "I'm listening, Camille. I've been listening for the last 20 minutes." She stopped pacing and turned to me. Her face was beautiful, even in her distress. The high cheekbones, the eyes that used to look at me with warmth, but now only held resentment. "I can't do this anymore. The routine, the expectation. I feel like I'm suffocating in this house, in this life." She used the word suffocating. It was a rehearsed word. I knew she had practiced this speech. I could almost hear the coaching behind it, the whispers of someone telling her that her unhappiness was my fault, that my stability was a cage. "Suffocating," I repeated, my tone even. "Is that what we are?" "It's not just us, Andrew," she sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It's me. I don't know who I am anymore outside of being Mrs. Brooks. I need to find myself. I need space." There it was, the word, space. In the language of modern marriage, space was often a euphemism for a rental apartment across town where a lover could visit without the paranoia of parking down the street. I knew about the lease she had signed 3 days ago at the Meridian. I knew about the text messages to Julian St. James that archived themselves on our shared cloud account she forgot to unlink. I knew she wasn't looking for herself. She was looking for a version of herself that didn't include me. I set the glass down on the granite counter. I didn't slam it. I didn't throw it. I just placed it there, precise and gentle. "Okay," I said. Camille blinked, her prepared arguments dying on her lips. She had expected a fight. She had expected me to plead, to offer counseling, to promise I would change. She wanted a reaction to validate her villain narrative of me. "Okay?" she whispered, confused. "If you need space, Camille, you should have it. I walked past her, towards the hallway. The scent of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, mixed with a faint, unfamiliar trace of tobacco smoke, filled the air. "I'll pack a bag tonight. I can be out of here in an hour." "Wait," she stammered, turning to follow me. "Andrew, we need to discuss the logistics. The gallery, the accounts, everything. You can't just leave tonight." I stopped at the foot of the stairs and looked back at her. For the first time all evening, I let the mask slip, just a fraction. I let her see the exhaustion in my eyes. "You asked for space," I said softly. "I'm giving it to you. All of it." "But where will you go?" "Does it matter?" I asked. She fell silent. The reality of the moment was settling in, colder than the winter wind rattling the window panes. She had pushed, and the wall she expected to hit had simply vanished, leaving her stumbling forward into the void. "I'll have Mark send over the paperwork for the separation agreement in the morning," I added, turning my back to her. "Good night, Camille." I walked up the stairs, leaving her standing alone in the perfectly curated kitchen of the home we had built together. She had demanded an exit. She had no idea that I had been standing by the door, hand on the latch, waiting for her to say the words. The master bedroom was suffocated by a thick, oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of hangers sliding against the metal rail of the closet. I moved with the efficiency that had defined my entire career at Brooks Financial. Assess the asset, determine the liability, and liquidate necessary positions. Right now, my marriage was the liability. I pulled my leather weekender from the top shelf. It was the same bag I used for business trips to New York, a vessel for a transient life. I didn't pack much. 3 suits, 5 shirts, a week's worth of undergarments. I left the cashmere sweaters Camille had bought me for Christmas. I left the watch she had engraved for my 40th birthday. Those belonged to the version of Andrew she was discarding. Camille stood in the doorway, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She hadn't moved since following me upstairs. She looked small against the dark mahogany frame, her eyes darting from the open suitcase to my face, searching for a crack in the armor. "You're packing the gray suit," she said, her voice thin. It was an inane observation, a desperate attempt to tether the situation to something mundane. "I have a meeting with the board on Tuesday," I replied without looking up, folding a crisp white shirt. "I'll need it." "Andrew, we haven't talked about rules," she pressed, taking a step into the room. "About how we're going to handle things. The house, the bills, appearance." I paused, my hand resting on the leather handle of the bag. "Appearance," I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the word. "You can tell people whatever you like, Camille. Tell them I'm working in London. Tell them I'm having a midlife crisis. Tell them I'm dead. It doesn't matter to me." "It matters to me," she snapped, her frustration finally bubbling over. "We have a reputation in this city. We can't just let people speculate." I finally turned to face her. "You should have thought about reputation before you rented an apartment at the Meridian under your maiden name." The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She had thought she was so clever, so discreet. She didn't realize that in my world, money leaves a trail louder than footprints in fresh snow. She stammered, her eyes welling up. "It's not what you think. It's just a studio, a place to paint, to breathe." "I didn't ask," I said, zipping. The bag shut. The sound was final, like a zipper on a body bag. "I'm not asking now." I grabbed my coat from the valet stand. I checked my pockets, wallet, phone. I hesitated for a moment, looking at the silver-framed photograph on the nightstand, a picture of us in Paris 10 years ago. We looked happy then. Or maybe I just looked oblivious. I left the photo where it was. I walked past her, the wheels of the suitcase humming softly on the carpet. Camille didn't move out of the way immediately. She stood her ground, forcing me to stop inches from her. "Andrew," she whispered, and for a second I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of the unknown. "You're really just going to leave? Just like that? After 14 years? You asked for space, Camille." I stepped around her, my voice devoid of the anger she desperately wanted me to show. Anger would have meant I still cared. Anger would have been a connection. "I'm just giving you exactly what you asked for." I walked down the stairs, the heavy thud of my footsteps echoing in the empty house. At the front door, I placed my set of house keys on the console table, right next to the bowl of potpourri she changed seasonally. The metal clinked against the wood, a tiny sound that signaled the end of an era. I opened the heavy oak door. The cold Boston air rushed in, biting and sharp, smelling of impending snow. I didn't look back. I stepped out into the night, the darkness swallowing me whole, leaving Camille standing in the warm, illuminated hallway of a house that was suddenly, terrifyingly, entirely hers.
Hold on. Let me pause here for a moment. Because Andrew's reaction is actually chilling. Camille wanted to scream. She wanted a battle to justify her feelings of being a victim. But by packing his bags with such surgical precision, Andrew denied her that satisfaction. He flipped the script instantly. It makes you wonder, how would you react if your partner just agreed to leave without fighting for you even once?
3 weeks into the separation, the silence Andrew had left behind was replaced by the chaotic noise of a life Camille convinced herself she had always wanted. The brownstone, once a sanctuary of hushed tones and polished surfaces, now smelled faintly of turpentine, stale wine, and Julian's clove cigarettes. Camille stood in the center of the living room, watching Julian St. James drape a tapestry over the grand piano. He was shirtless, his torso splattered with flecks of crimson paint, a stark contrast to the tailored suits Andrew had worn like a second skin. Julian moved with a fluid, reckless energy that made Camille feel drunk just watching him. This was what she had craved: passion, unpredictability, a life lived in vivid color rather than grayscale. "The light in here is finally breathing," Julian declared, stepping back to admire his work. He picked up a crystal tumbler from the coffee table, Andrew's Baccarat crystal, and took a swig of the amber liquid. It was a 20-year-old single malt, a bottle Andrew had been saving for a special occasion. Julian drank it like it was water. "It feels different," Camille agreed, though a small, nagging voice in the back of her head noted the ring of condensation Julian's glass was leaving on the antique wood. "It feels open." She walked over to the hallway console, where a mountain of envelopes had accumulated. The neat, organized stack that Andrew used to process every evening had turned into a sprawling mess. There were letters from the utility company, the landscapers, and several thick envelopes from Brooks Financial. She picked one up, feeling the weight of the embossed paper, then tossed it back down unopened. She didn't want to think about logistics. Not today. "Come here," Julian called out, sensing her distraction. He pulled her onto the sofa, his hands rough and eager. For an hour, she let herself get lost in him, using his touch to drown out the silence of the phone that never rang. Andrew hadn't called. Not once. Camille had expected him to check in. She had anticipated late-night texts asking if she was okay, or awkward voicemails about house maintenance. She had prepared herself to be the one to ask for boundaries. But Andrew's absence was total. It was as if he had ceased to exist the moment he stepped out the door. Later that afternoon, driven by an insecurity she couldn't name, she dialed Andrew's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried his office line next. "Mr. Brooks's office, this is Sarah speaking." "Sarah, it's Camille. Is Andrew in?" There was a pause on the line, a hesitation that chilled her. "Mrs. Brooks. Mr. Brooks has instructed us to direct all your calls to Mark Stevens. I can transfer you to his legal department if you'd like." Camille felt the blood drain from her face. "He's my husband, Sarah. Just put him on." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Brooks. I really can't." The line clicked and transferred before she could protest. Mark Stevens picked up on the first ring, his voice clipped and professional, devoid of the warmth he usually showed at their dinner parties. "Camille, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "I want to speak to Andrew, Mark. Why is he dodging me?" "He isn't dodging you," Mark replied smoothly. "He's respecting the terms of the separation you requested. You asked for space. Andrew is ensuring you have it, legally and personally. Unless this is an emergency regarding your daughter or the property, he prefers not to be disturbed." "Disturbed?" Camille gripped the phone tighter. "I'm his wife." "For now," Mark said, the words hanging heavy in the air. "Is there anything else?" Camille hung up, her hand trembling. She looked around the living room. Julian had fallen asleep on the rug, a half-smoked cigarette smoldering dangerously close to the Persian silk. The freedom she had fought for suddenly felt less like a wide-open field and more like a vacuum. She walked to the window and looked out at the street. A black sedan was parked 3 houses down, engine running. For a second she thought it was Andrew watching over her, making sure she was safe. But as she watched, the car pulled away and disappeared around the corner, leaving the street empty. "Who needs him?" she whispered to the glass, trying to believe it. "I have everything I need right here." Behind her, the cigarette ash finally fell, burning a tiny, irrevocable black hole into the fabric of the rug. The realization that my life was dismantling itself didn't come with a bang, but with a shiver. It was a Tuesday morning in late November when I woke up and saw my breath misting in the air of the master bedroom. The radiator, usually a source of reliable, silent warmth, was stone cold. I pulled the duvet tighter around me, waiting for the system to kick in, but the silence in the house was absolute. Downstairs, the thermostat screen was blank. Panic, sharp and unfamiliar, pricked at my chest. In 14 years, I had never had to call a repairman. Things in the Brooks household simply worked. Light bulbs replaced themselves, drains unclogged by magic. Heat existed as a constant, unquestioned fact. I found the number for the HVAC company on a sticker inside the utility closet. "Service department, this is Mike." "Yes, this is Camille Brooks. My heating is down. I need someone out immediately." "Address?" I gave it to him. There was the sound of typing, followed by a long, awkward pause. "Mrs. Brooks, I see the account here, but we have a flag on it. The service contract expired last week, and the renewal payment didn't go through. We can't send a technician until the balance is cleared and a new card is on file." "That's ridiculous," I snapped, my teeth chattering. "Andrew handles this. Just bill the usual account." "That card was declined, ma'am. It's been reported as inactive." I ended the call, my fingers numb. Inactive. Andrew hadn't just left. He had systematically severed the digital arteries of our household. I rushed to the study, booting up the desktop computer to check our joint accounts. Access denied. The screen stared back at me, mocking. The password had been changed. I tried the backup. Our anniversary date. Incorrect. I clicked Forgot Password, and the system cheerfully informed me that a verification code had been sent to Andrew's mobile number. I was locked out of my own life. The front door slammed open, startling me. Julian breezed in, carrying a portfolio and a takeout coffee cup. He didn't seem to notice the freezing temperature, or perhaps his adrenaline was keeping him warm. "Camille, darling, we have a problem," he announced, dropping his coat on the floor. "Another mess I would have to clean up. The gallery venue needs the deposit by noon. They're threatening to give the slot to some hack from New York." He looked at me, expecting the usual checkbook, the usual smile. He didn't see the terror in my eyes. "Julian, the heat is off," I said, my voice trembling. "I can't access the bank accounts. Andrew changed the passwords." Julian frowned, but it wasn't a frown of concern for me. It was the annoyance of a child told the toy store is closed. "Okay, so call him. Fix it. I need that 5,000, Camille. My career is on the line here." "I can't call him," I whispered. "He won't answer. And I don't think there's money in the joint account anymore. I think he moved it." The charm evaporated instantly. The boyish, artistic wonder that I had fallen in love with vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating sneer I had never seen before. "You told me you were independent," Julian said, his voice low and dangerous. "You told me you owned that gallery, that you had your own resources. Were you lying to me?" "I do. I did. It's just complicated right now." "It's not complicated," he spat, turning away from me. "It's embarrassing. If you can't fund the show, just say so. Don't drag me into your domestic drama." He picked up his coat. "Where are you going?" I asked, stepping toward him. "It's freezing in here. Stay with me." "I can't work in this cold, Camille. It's bad for the paints." He walked out. He didn't kiss me goodbye. He didn't offer to help with the furnace. He just left, closing the door on a woman standing in a freezing hallway, surrounded by expensive furniture she suddenly wasn't sure she could afford to keep. I sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, wrapping my arms around my knees. The silence returned, heavier than before. I looked at the phone in my hand, willing it to ring, willing Andrew to call and say it was all a mistake, that he had taken care of it. But the screen remained black. For the first time, I realized that the cage I had complained about was actually a fortress. And now the walls were breached, and the enemy wasn't Andrew. It was the cold reality of the world he had kept at bay for 14 years. The winter solstice gala at the Rosewood Country Club was the apex of the Boston social calendar. In previous years, my arrival had been an event in itself. I would walk in on Andrew's arm, wearing silk and diamonds, and the room would gravitationally shift toward us. I was Mrs. Andrew Brooks, the charming curator, the philanthropist, the woman who had it all. Tonight, I walked in alone. I wore a backless crimson gown that cost more than Julian's car, a statement piece intended to scream confidence and vitality. I held my head high, ready to accept the whispers of admiration for my bravery, my independence. But as I descended the grand staircase, the room didn't shift. It didn't even ripple. I approached a group of women I had brunched with for a decade. Eleanor Whitmore, whose husband sat on the board of the Museum of Fine Arts, turned her back slightly as I neared, her body language forming a pristine impenetrable wall of chiffon. "Eleanor," I said, forcing a bright smile. "That emerald necklace is stunning." Eleanor turned, her eyes scanning me with the clinical detachment of an appraiser looking at a fake. "Camille, we didn't expect to see you. We heard Andrew wasn't attending with you." "We're taking some time apart," I said, the rehearsed line tasting like ash. "It's very healthy. Self-discovery is important." "I'm sure," Eleanor murmured, her gaze already drifting past me. "Although, looking at the guest list, I believe Andrew is here, and he seems to have discovered something quite interesting." My stomach dropped. I followed her gaze across the ballroom. There, standing near the champagne tower, was Andrew. He wasn't the tired, gray-faced man I had pushed out of my kitchen 3 weeks ago. He looked revitalized. His tuxedo fit him perfectly, emphasizing broad shoulders I hadn't noticed in years. He held a glass of sparkling water, listening intently to the woman standing next to him. She was stunning, not in the flashy, desperate way I was dressed tonight, but with an effortless, understated elegance. She was younger than me, perhaps mid-30s, with dark hair pinned up and a posture that radiated competence. I recognized her vaguely. Elena, a senior partner at a rival firm, a woman known for her intellect, not her neediness. Andrew said something, and Elena threw her head back and laughed. It was a genuine, throaty laugh. And then Andrew smiled. It wasn't the polite, tight-lipped smile he gave at dinner parties. It was a real smile. It reached his eyes. He looked lighter. He looked like a man who had put down a heavy burden and walked away from it without looking back. I felt a surge of nausea. I wanted to march over there, to claim him, to remind everyone that he was mine. I took a step forward, but the invisible barrier of the room held me back. No one was making way for me. I was just another guest, and an unwelcome one at that. A waiter passed by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. I grabbed a glass of champagne, my hand shaking so badly a few drops spilled onto my wrist. "He looks happy, doesn't he?" a voice whispered near my ear. It was Mark Stevens, Andrew's lawyer. He had appeared out of nowhere, holding his own drink, watching me watch them. "Who is she?" I hissed, unable to keep the venom out of my voice. "A colleague, an equal," Mark said, his voice devoid of sympathy. "Someone who doesn't ask him to apologize for his success." "He's trying to make me jealous," I said, grasping at straws. "It's a performance." Mark turned to me, his expression almost pitying. "Camille, look at him. He hasn't looked in your direction once. He doesn't know you're here. And frankly, I don't think he cares." The truth of it hit me harder than the freezing house. Andrew wasn't playing a game. He wasn't plotting to win me back. He was simply living. He had moved on with the terrifying speed of a man who had grieved the relationship while he was still in it. I turned and fled. I didn't wait for the valet to bring my car. I ran out into the biting cold of the valet circle, my crimson dress dragging in the slush, escaping the warmth of a world I had foolishly thought revolved around me.
Think about this for a second. This might be the hardest hit to her ego yet. Camille realized her entire social standing was just a reflection of Andrew's light. Watching him thrive without her, while she fades into the background, that has to sting more than any argument. It begs the question, is it better to be loved for who you are, or respected for who you're standing next to?
I returned to the brownstone shivering, not just from the winter wind that bit through my thin silk dress, but from the bone-deep chill of humiliation. The image of Andrew laughing with Elena, a laugh that used to belong to me, played on a loop in my mind. I needed Julian. I needed his chaotic warmth, his flattery, his insistence that we were the only two people in the world who understood what it meant to really live. I pushed open the front door. The house was dark, but a flashlight beam sliced through the gloom of the study. "Julian?" I called out, my voice trembling. The light jerked frantically. I rushed into the room and found him standing by the wall, safe. The painting that usually covered it, a landscape I had inherited from my grandmother, was on the floor. The safe was open. Julian was shoving my jewelry cases into his canvas duffel bag. He froze when he saw me like a deer caught in headlights. But then his expression shifted. There was no guilt, only annoyance. "You're back early," he muttered, zipping the bag. "What are you doing?" I asked, the words feeling thick and clumsy. "Those are my mother's pearls. That's my engagement ring." "You said you wanted to support my vision, Camille," he spat, hoisting the bag over his shoulder. "But when the bill came due for the gallery, you froze. You're just like the rest of them. All talk, no sacrifice. I need liquid assets to get to New York." "You're stealing from me," I whispered, the realization hitting me harder than a physical blow. "I left my husband for you." Julian laughed. It was a cruel, hollow sound that echoed off the mahogany bookshelves. "You didn't leave him for me, Camille. You left him because you were bored and you wanted a pet. But guess what? Pets get hungry." He walked past me, brushing my shoulder with the heavy bag. "And by the way, I saw the foreclosure notice on the counter. You're not the rich patron of the arts you pretended to be. You're broke." The front door slammed. I stood in the silence, the echo of his exit fading into the cold house. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor amidst the scattered papers he had knocked off the desk. My hand landed on a thick envelope with a red, urgent stamp. I tore it open. It wasn't just a foreclosure notice for the gallery. It was a demand letter from a private equity firm regarding the Beaumont estate debt. I scanned the legal jargon, my breath catching in my throat. Principal amount, $4.5 million. Outstanding interest, $0. My father hadn't left me a fortune. He had died bankrupt. I turned the page to the payment history. Every month for the last 10 years, a wire transfer of $12,000 had been made to service the debt and keep the creditors from seizing the gallery and the family home. Payer, Andrew Brooks. The room spun. I had spent years calling Andrew controlling, boring, uninspired. I had accused him of dimming my light. I had told my friends that I was a self-made woman, that the gallery was my legacy. All this time, Andrew had been quietly paying a fortune to protect my ego. He had never told me. He had let me believe I was successful, let me believe my father was a hero, while he worked late nights to pay for mistakes he didn't make. He hadn't kept me in a cage. He had built a shelter around me to keep out the storm, and when I demanded he leave, I had kicked out the only pillar holding up the roof. I looked at the date on the letter. The payments had stopped exactly 21 days ago, the day I asked for space. Andrew had respected my wishes perfectly. He had stopped controlling my life. He had stopped fixing my problems. And now, the roof was caving in. It took 3 hours and a humiliated plea to Mark Stevens's personal assistant to get the address. Andrew was staying at the Archer, a boutique hotel in the Seaport district, known for its discretion and its stark, industrial minimalism. It was the complete opposite of the clutter and history of our brownstone. I stood outside room 412, my hand hovering over the wood. I looked like a wreck. My makeup was smeared from the tears I had shed in the car, and I was still wearing the red dress from the gala, now wrinkled and stained with slush at the hem. I didn't care. I needed him to see me like this. I needed him to see the broken thing he had left behind, trusting that his instinct to fix me would override his pride. I knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Andrew stood there, dressed in dark lounge pants and a charcoal sweater. He didn't look surprised to see me. He didn't look happy either. He looked at me with the same detached curiosity one might regard a stranger who had taken a wrong turn. "Andrew," I choked out, the sob rising in my throat. "Please." He stepped back, allowing me to enter. The room was expansive, dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. It was beautiful, cold, and completely devoid of personality. There were no photos, no books, no clutter, just him. "I know about the debt," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "I found the papers. My father, the bankruptcy. You paid it. For 10 years, you paid it." Andrew walked to the wet bar and poured a glass of water. He didn't offer me one. I did. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "Why did you let me walk around thinking I was some grand success while you were bleeding money to keep my name clean?" "Because you needed to be the hero of your own story, Camille," he said, turning to face me. "And for you to be the hero, I had to be the villain. I had to be the boring, controlling checkbook that held you back. If I had told you that you were living on charity, it would have destroyed you. So I let you hate me instead." I froze. The truth of his words cut deeper than any insult. "I don't hate you," I whispered, stepping toward him. "I was just confused. I was lost. But I see it now. Julian, the apartment, the space, it was all a mistake. I want to come home, Andrew. I want us to fix this." I reached for his hand, but he didn't move to meet me. His arms remained at his sides, heavy and immobile. "You're not lost, Camille," he said softly. "And this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice." "No, it was a momentary lapse. I was feeling suffocated. I read the texts," he interrupted. His voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the room instantly. I blinked. "What?" "The texts between you and Julian, from October, before you asked for the separation." He looked me in the eye, his gaze steady and devastating. "I saw the ones where you mocked my job, the ones where you called me a soul-sucking necessity. I saw the photos you sent him from our bedroom while I was downstairs making you dinner." The air left my lungs. He knew. He had known the entire time. When I stood in the kitchen demanding space, when I accused him of smothering me, when I walked out the door, he had known exactly who I was and what I had done. "You knew," I whispered, horror washing over me. "And you still let me go? You still packed your bag without a fight?" "I didn't see the point in fighting for someone who had already laughed at my devotion," Andrew said. "You wanted to be with a man who made you feel alive. I decided to let you see what life looks like without the man who keeps you safe." He took a sip of his water, looking out at the dark harbor. "I'm sorry," I sobbed, falling to my knees. It wasn't a performance anymore. I was terrified. "I'm so sorry. Please, Andrew, I can't do this alone. The gallery is gone. The money is gone. I have nothing." "You have your space," Andrew said, looking down at me. There was no malice in his face, only a profound, exhausting finality. "And now, you have the truth. That will have to be enough. Get up, Camille." Andrew's voice was devoid of malice, but it carried a command that pulled me from the floor. He didn't offer a hand to help me. That small courtesy, that instinctive reflex of care he had shown for 14 years, was gone. I stood up, smoothing the wrinkles of my ruined dress, feeling small in the vast, modern silence of his hotel room. He walked to the sleek glass desk and picked up a manila envelope. He held it out to me, not as a husband giving a gift, but as a banker closing a file. "I had Mark draw these up yesterday," he said. "It's a fair settlement. You get the brownstone, the car, and a lump sum that should help you transition. But the debt payments for your father's estate stop today. I'm liquidating the trust I set up for the gallery. You'll have to decide whether to sell the business or find your own investors." I took the envelope, my hands trembling. The weight of the paper felt immense. "Divorce? Andrew, we can go to counseling. We can work through this. You said you loved me." "I did," he replied, his eyes finally locking onto mine with a clarity that broke my heart. "I loved you enough to pay for your father's mistakes for a decade so you could feel proud of your name. I loved you enough to stay quiet when you insulted me to your friends, because I knew you were insecure. I loved you enough to let you go when you said you were suffocating." He paused, and for a brief second, a shadow of pain crossed his face, only to be replaced by that terrifying calm. "But love isn't a renewable resource, Camille. You spent it all. You emptied the account." "But I'm here now," I pleaded, stepping closer, desperate to bridge the physical gap between us. "I'm choosing you. Doesn't that matter? I'm choosing you over Julian, over the freedom, over everything." Andrew shook his head slowly. "You're not choosing me. You're running away from the cold. There's a difference. You're only here because the heating went off and the credit card stopped working. If Julian had been rich, if the gallery had been profitable, you wouldn't be standing in this room." I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words died in my throat. He was right, and the fact that he knew it, that he saw me so completely, with all my ugliness and selfishness laid bare, was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. "I can't be your safety net anymore," he said, walking to the door and opening it. The hallway light spilled in, harsh and artificial. "It's not good for either of us. You wanted to find yourself. You can't do that while standing on my shoulders." I walked to the doorway, clutching the envelope to my chest like a shield. I looked back at him one last time. He stood in the center of the room, framed by the city lights behind him. He didn't look broken. He looked like a man who had survived a long illness and was finally breathing fresh air. "What am I supposed to do?" I whispered, the terror of the future finally setting in. "I'm alone, Andrew. It's too much space." Andrew looked at me, his expression softening just enough to remind me of the man I had married, before hardening into the man I had created. "You asked for space, Camille. I just gave you the whole world," he said, his voice quiet and final. "Try not to drown in it." He closed the door. The click of the latch was soft, but it echoed with the finality of a gunshot. I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the wood grain, waiting for him to open it, waiting for the reprieve. But the door stayed shut. I turned and walked toward the elevator. Outside, the city of Boston was sprawled out in the darkness, vast and cold and indifferent. I had my freedom. I had my name. I had the silence I had begged for. And as the elevator doors slid closed, trapping me in my own reflection, I realized it was the loudest sound I had ever heard.
This story leaves such a bittersweet ache, doesn't it? It forces us to distinguish between the thrill of the moment and the quiet safety of someone who holds up the sky for you. Camille found her freedom, but the cost was her sanctuary. If you were in Andrew's shoes, knowing she only returned when she was desperate, would you have opened the door? Or would you have walked away too? If this story touched you, please leave a like and share it with someone who might need a reminder to appreciate what they have. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of your heart.